Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's finally time to continue our program, our beautiful show. Please drop your coffees, your teas, and join us. Get ready for the fantastic flow of information coming right from the discussion panel.
We are deciding on the construction company on Monday, and we got
Yes, I do hope that you enjoyed your short break. Next, we will proceed to our panel discussion, which will be moderated by the most fascinated leading lady of the media industry, Mrs. Riikka Venäläinen. Riikka, please join us in the podium.
Thank you, Petri.
Are you sure you can handle this kind of panel? These are quite a lot of people right now.
I'm not sure. Bruce Oreck just asked me, what kind of fist fight do you want? And I said that not a fist fight with you, because you're much stronger than I am.
Definitely not with me anyhow. But I think it's time to start.
Thank you. So, as we all know, and we have many times discussed today here, the work life and the future of work is in huge change. And the question is, are we going to participate the change? Or are we even going to have our own effect on this change? Or are we just going to stand still and watch what's going to actually happen? I hope not. I hope we will find the answers and have a nice discussion about what kind of future we will have in our work life. And during this panel discussion, we are prospecting futures and seeking answers to many kind of interesting questions, like how will valuable and meaningful work for individuals generate meaningful value for companies? And then how can high value generation become a vital condition for the work of the future and the future of work? And how can Finnish companies turn these to competitive advantages on global markets? And what do these changes require from leadership? Because it requires a lot. And what does it require from our education system, including lifelong learning and things called this? But now, the main thing, may I present you the 6 amazing participants of our panel discussion. I'll invite you one by one here. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Berner. Berner is the main owner of leading Finnish family-run home textile company Brunila Interior and chairman of the Association for Finnish Work. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you.
And then may I invite here Brunila. And Brunila is a board professional. She's a member of boards of Sampo and Kone and Sanoma and Stora Enso. And she's also newly appointed as professor of practice in Hanken School of Economics. And please welcome Olli-Pekka Heinonen. Olli-Pekka works as a state secretary at Prime Minister's office, and he has himself also been a minister for 3 times. And he's also, as well as worked in executive position in Finnish Broadcasting Company. Welcome. And then we have Tuuli Kaskinen. Welcome, Tuuli. Tuuli is operations director and researcher in think tank Demos Helsinki. She's a specialist in environmental issues, especially climate and energy issues. And she's also a specialist in sustainable business strategies. And very, very interesting things. Okay, so we have Bruce Oreck. Welcome, Bruce. Bruce is the United States ambassador to Finland and a lawyer and a specialist in environmental issues too. And amongst other things, he's a founder of Zero Carbon Initiative organization, which is very interesting. And then we have Oras Tynkkynen. Welcome, Oras. He's a member of parliament from the Greens of Finland, and he's also the vice chairman of Committee of the Future in Finnish parliament. So there's one place left. Is it for me? Thank you. So, to start with, I have a very, very short and light question for all of you, to everybody. How would you describe yourself as a worker? Let's start with Anne.
One word, passionate.
Passionate, okay.
Yes.
Then Bruce.
Constantly changing.
Okay. Oras.
I guess I could say I'm a workaholic.
Workaholic, okay. And Tuuli.
Now they took all of those already, so probably I'm quite committed.
Committed, okay.
I have a strong sense of responsibility.
Okay. And Anne.
Now I'm last, so I'll take all of these. and then I add to that the perseverance. I'll never give up.
Okay, that's great. Nobody said diligent, as we Finnish workers used to describe ourselves in this study. But so today we will approach the future work from 3 different angles. And they are first the individual perspective, then organizational perspective, and then the third is the perspective of innovation scene and renewable companies. And shall we begin with the first theme, which is an individual's point of view. And now for a little warm-up, we will hear the first wake-up presentation, which will be held by creative director Jani Halme from media agency Toinen Helsinki. Please welcome Mr. Jani Halme.
So, good to be here. I'm Jani Halme, and I'm creative director of Toinen PhD. And how does this work? Like here. And I would like to spend 10 minutes with you talking about robots and creative work. We are leading media agency in Finland, and we are part of Omnico Media Group, which is world's biggest marketing communication organization. But I don't like to speak about us, but about my hometown, Parikkala. Parikkala, where I'm from, and I still live, is a quite tiny city, town in the eastern Finland, and there is 60 kilometers from Parikkala to every single place on earth. 60 kilometers is from Parikkala. 60 kilometers from Parikkala to Imatra. 60 kilometers from Parikkala to Savonlinna, and 60 kilometers from Parikkala to dacha or cottage of Vladimir Putin. So he's one of our, neighbors. But why I'm talking about Parikkala? Because, as mentioned, I live there and I'm from there. And when I was a teenager in Parikkala, marketing was quite easy. Because here are all medias which could reach me 25 years ago when I was a teenager. Yeah. So there was only one TV channel where marketers could broadcast ads, MTV3. There was only one magazine which I ordered called Suosikki. There was a few magazines and newspapers which our family ordered. Parikkalan Sanomat, Helsingin Sanomat, Etelä-Savon Rappeenranta, and our local bank called Coop sent every single month they send Hakki Hamsteri magazine for us, so-called asiakkuusmarkkinointi in Finland. So honestly, at that time it was quite easy to reach teenager from Parikkala. 2013, it's quite hard. As we all know, there's a bunch of the huge amount of medias which a teenager from Parikkala can choose. And honestly, as we know, they will choose and they're already choosing. They are spending their time between Parikkalan Sanomat, Helsingin Sanomat, online, Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that. And we in marketing industry who work there, it's impossible to reach teenagers from Parikkala in this world without any help. Honestly, we can't calculate any kind of path from our client's message to customer's heart without any help. And we have ordered some help, and we have get that help, and we got that help from the robots. This is my new working partner. Nowadays, there is no anymore just kind of working couples like art director and copywriters. There are working teams where it includes copywriter, art director, coder, and the robot. And I'm not talking about any kind of Minority Report type of skiffy. I'm talking about basically tools what we are using already, every single day. We all know that 50%, half of the marketing investments are useless. They are crap, and nobody is interested about those. But, as we all know, who can tell us which part of these marketing investments are useless? But in this world, we know. Because we are merging from the guessing marketing to data-driven marketing, where we really know who is interesting about our message and where and how. And the message basically is all marketing in digital environment and buying will turn data-driven. All price negotiations and purchases are handled by the robots. And we are doing this every single day. And this world, in this new era, is called programming buying. And this is the most biggest change in the marketing industry in my life. And it is possible because of three big things has happened within the year in Finnish market. And all these changes have continued this year. First, we have technology it's basically cookie-based technology. We can track all our customers' path on the internet. We have a huge amount of behavioral and interest data available for as advertisers. For example, if somebody is planning to buy a trip to Thailand, you can even think how easy it's even for a bit stupider robot to understand, okay, this customer is going to Thailand because of Google. They are doing a lot of search, and the search reveals buying intentions. Facebook gives us, reveals interested areas and a quite nice demographic information for us. Media usage reveals consumer content and channels preferences. We know what kind of articles they are interesting. And last but not least, marketing own web channels. Let's say if you have a web store, we know exactly what kind of products you are basically interesting for. Second issue is that the media has opened their inventories for advertisers. We can use our own data to buy media. So basically all medias at the moment is like empty windows for us, no regarding media. And the medias, they open their own media inventory for us within the year. Facebook opened their inventory for us in last February. Google does it in June. Sanoma, Alma, MTV3, Aalto Media in the last spring. So basically, nobody is calling anywhere, but we are buying this media space automatically. And we have systems. We have merged system and tools which enables targeting and data-driven buying. So basically, we can use the information what we know about clients and media space open. So these tools help us pick exactly the right people to see our ads. And not only ad, but that those ads are tailored for them. This is mass media, but in targeted way. And at the moment, we can basically target all display ads, all Google ads, all Facebook page posts, and TV spots in the online TV. That means a lot for requirements of working in the marketing industry, and they are changing now faster than ever. There won't be any more so much jobs than at the moment for accounting jobs. Nobody is calling anyone, so logistic jobs and account jobs. Honestly, robots can do such kind of jobs much faster and much effective way than we human beings can. But at the same time, there are countless false expectations what robots can do. And human, thank God for us, it's much more complex creature than a friends of data porn, those behavioral targeting keynote speakers try to speak. We are a much complex person. So what we in the marketing industry, what kind of knowledge we want and what we need. There will be a lot of open work possibilities for people who have a creative mindset and storytelling skills. Eventually, as we say in Finland, lopuksi humanisteille käy hyvin. We need more persons, more humanists, more storyteller, because that will be only possibility to reach teenagers from Parikkala. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jani Halme, for your inspiring speech. So now let us hear from our panelists. What kind of ideas popped into your minds from Jani Halme's presentation? Do you agree or disagree with him? How about Anne, if you could please begin?
I absolutely agree that we need more storytelling and more a humane approach to approaching in our sales and in our marketing. At the same time, I'm a huge believer in the robotization. I'm also a huge believer in the digitalization. And I think that what is the most important for us is a little bit what Jocke already approached in his presentation. We need to find new ways how to create value with the time that we use. And how to do that by using the best that we have as humans. And that is our emotions, our ability to combine information, and to be creative in our approach. At the same time, we have to be productive. And I think that's our competitive advantage. And we have to know how to use the machines to make and give us that advantage in the future.
Thank you, Anne. How about Olli-Pekka?
Well, there were two ideas that came to my mind of Jani's interesting presentation. The first one is the kind of question of attitude, that when we're talking about robotics, for example, then pretty soon we start talking about what's happening to the jobs. And that's the attitude question, that do we concentrate on the jobs that will be killed? Or do we concentrate on the jobs that there's a possibility to be created? And I think that's a big question in Finland. And I'm a bit worried when there came out the survey saying that 30% of our jobs will be dead in a certain time period, that we tend to focus on the dead jobs. And we forget that there's a huge possibility to create entirely new type of jobs, which could be a huge possibility for Finland. My other idea that came to my mind was the question, had something to do with humanities. And that's a question that in the development of the working life, are we going to the direction where we continue the kind of specialization of jobs that we have lived for such a long time? Or are we seeing a kind of a moment when there is a clear need to get a better, bigger picture, to have kind of more holistic views, that we cannot only cope with the specialization, because there are so many interdependencies and so much change, that we have to also create abilities to have a more holistic view.
Yeah, so we need kind of deep knowledge, but forget the silo system.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. How about Tuuli? What popped into your mind?
Actually, Jani mentioned this creative mindset and storytelling that I kind of completely agree. We in Demos have been doing a research about university students and their abilities and future willingnesses, what they are expecting from working life. And one of the things that came out from that research, when we also discussed actually with companies, was that it's curiosity that we need. And I think it's the same thing with the creative mindset and storytelling. But if you are like working in a advertisement office, you probably call them like that. But in any job, you can call it as curiosity. So you have to be interested in several issues, and you have to be able to make yourself to be again and again interested in new things. And how this kind of curiosity is able to be built in these jobs that we are probably losing, but also to the jobs we are creating. I think that's a big question, and that's a big question for leadership as well. Like, how do we create working spaces where you are able to use your curiosity? And I know in this room we are quite many leaders who know that if we give free hands, everything goes mixed and messed, and that's not possible. But what's the way to open that kind of area where curiosity might happen? I think that's one of the big questions.
Thank you. I'm really happy about this because in the newsroom I've been talking around and around that curiosity is the main thing in news work. Yeah. You really need that. Without that you can forget the whole media business. Thank you. So Oras, what popped into your mind about this Jani Halme's presentation?
Well, first of all, I was very delighted that he talked about Parikkala because my dad's family comes from Punkaharju, which is just next door, and I've spent a lot of time in Parikkala as a kid. Secondly, I work in the Committee for the Future in the Parliament, and we meet a lot of future studies, researchers and experts. And I think one kind of overarching lesson you can draw from future studies is that we oftentimes tend to overestimate the change in the short run and underestimate the change in the long run. So when you look at these TED presentations on the internet, or you listen to very inspirational speakers about new technologies and innovations, you get this impression that this is going to happen overnight. You wake up next morning and then this is the world, the new world you see. And in practice, often there's a lot of social and political inertia, so it takes a while for these new ideas to work their way through the society. Secondly, I feel obliged to touch upon this personalization of data from the point of view of privacy concerns. I think there is a growing awareness of privacy concerns related to companies using different types of data that is now abundantly available. We talk about big data, we talk about data residue, so kind of data that is a byproduct of different processes and services. And many people are increasingly worried about the use of this type of data and undermining their privacy concerns. And I would also like to use this opportunity to present to you that I am going to try to find out what kind of data my mobile phone operators have about me, get all the data that is possible to glean from their systems, and then publish it for people to see so that they can realize how intimately these companies know us today, and whether they want to restrict these privacy intrusions we are facing in our everyday lives.
Like big data should also be open data.
And it should be my data. It should be possible for people to control their own data.
Okay, thank you, very interesting. How about Bruce? What do you think about this?
These are just all interesting points. Every one of them could lead to hours of conversation. But if we stick to the jobs question, and I think it ties in both to what Olli was saying and also what Oras was saying, is we tend to focus on what we're losing sometimes and not think forward. And then this issue of we think in the short term, we fail to think in the long term. If you think historically, cities founded themselves along trade routes, the Silk Road, or along a river, or where there was a salt mine, and something fundamentally changed, and the city vanishes into the time of history, into the sands of history. And so when you talk about robotics and job changing, we're thinking about, okay, what am I going to do? But when really the compelling question is, what are we going to do as a society? What does this mean to how our cities are organized, or how our countries are organized? When the fundamentals, and it's no different than if salt was precious and it gave rise to a city built around salt mines. When salt became cheap, the city went away. If it was a city was built on a port and the river changed or the tides changed, it went away. What we're really seeing here in the longer term is a fundamental shift in the organization of our society, and hence our major cities. The trend is massive urbanization around the globe. Shortly, 70%, 7 out of 10 people will live in a city. And those cities are really organized around business practices, trade, commerce, all that, those very concepts which are shifting so quickly lots of forward inertia, but very little true forward planning. And I think there's going to be an immense disconnect. Not this year, not next year, but 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. You know, it's kind of like if you go out today and if you have a child and you say, look, he or she is very cute, they're 1 year old, I want to buy clothing for the next 5 years, but you keep buying the same size they're in today. Oops, you know.
Thank you. How about Anne?
So hard to find any new angles on this discussion because almost everything I think related to this issue is more or less said how I think about things. But if you think about how much world has changed and technology has changed during the past 20 years because of digitalization, like we heard Esko and Stuart Parking discussion, so this will not stop here, and of course there will be automation and robotization, and they are not just coming 5 or 10 or 15 years, but they are already happening now, like in banking or insurance or industry and many areas like others and in the advertising business. And I would rather embrace this change because it will relieve a lot of people out of routine, dangerous, hard work, and we could really create much more inspiring, exciting, rewarding, creative jobs and works. And instead of opposing this trend because we cannot change it, it is happening, we should really jump in it and be in the first place to embrace all these changes. But that requires, I think, if you think about the Finnish people traditionally and how we regard ourselves, we are very good in developing technologies. But we should really change the mindset, thinking about what kind of technologies, how we could benefit them, and how we should use them, not just to what are the needs and what type of needs and customer satisfaction we try to achieve, and not just to have first invent the technology and then start to think about what we could do with it, but from the other way down, thinking what are the needs and develop the technologies and use them there. I think it is very much of a question of mindset, and then of course we need much broader based education, so that if you think about our current education system, we are very focused and specialized. Of course we need this type of education and experts, but still we all need much more skills, much broader set of skills to be able to cope with the changes in the world, and also everybody of us have to change their jobs over time, I believe.
Thank you, Anne. So I think everybody of us think that we need more optimism, less pessimism, shift our energies towards seeing the possibilities of the future, more curiosity, and at the same time be aware of these possible threats for privacy and so on. But we have a bright future ahead of us. So, but one of these greatest changes in future work will for sure be the rise of these more smart machines and systems, which we have been talking about here. For example, robots and artificial intelligence. And for example, professor and theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking has recently stated that artificial intelligence could outsmart humans, also in creativity and so on. And how do you feel about this possible development? Do you believe in it, or is it possible, or what will happen? How about Anne, if you could please talk?
About artificial intelligence, yes. I'm very good to answer this because I don't know anything, almost anything about it. But what I've read and listened, because nowadays it is also a huge advantage of the technology that whoever can look, the best professors in the world talking whatever subjects in the internet and learn the things if you are curious. And I've listened to some of these professors' lectures. I believe that is a combination of human skills and these machines and artificial intelligence where we can benefit from. I don't see them as like a Star Trek thing that the robots are coming and invading us and killing the people, but I just see that there is a big opportunity for cooperation and getting something better than what we can as only human beings. That is on the top of us, not against us.
Okay, thank you. How about Bruce? What do you think?
You know, last night I was talking with Stuart, who I hated talking to because he made me feel so incredibly dumb. But he was talking about the massive increase in storage capacity and hence the ability to move data, the big data conversation. And the question shifted. I pressed him on, okay, when these machines become so incredibly capable, and there's the ability to move such huge quantities of data, at what point does the machine gain sentience? Does it gain true self-awareness? Now, that requires defining what that means. That today, a robot can be aware of its surroundings through the programming, but when something becomes truly self-aware, the dog is self-aware, right? Then we've created an interesting moral dilemma, because you have now created something that is, in essence, alive. You could say, well, it's not really alive because it's plugged into the wall. Well, in the old days, when people had whatever polio or something and they had to be put in an iron lung, if you unplugged them, they died. They were certainly aware, but if you pull the plug out, they die, and you have the same thing in a hospital today. So that can't be the measure, right? The plug doesn't. We create effectively a second sentient, intelligent species that we are now vying with. Again, I'm not worried about Arnold Schwarzenegger showing up and, also making me feel bad about myself. But rather, it's an interesting moral dilemma that we actually create life through sentience, and what does that do for our role on the planet? Just a, simple problem.
Thank you, Bruce. How about Oras? What do you think about this artificial intelligence issues?
Well, some people grew up on serials. I'd say I grew up on science fiction. I absorbed a lot of science fiction as a kid. And this issue obviously has been one of the main concerns of science fiction for not centuries, but decades. I'm very interested in the possibilities of artificial intelligence. I'm kind of a bit worried about the time of robot MPs, because then I would have to find another job, robot ambassadors. I don't know about that.
That requires intelligence, artificial or otherwise, and we don't have to have that.
Not going to comment on that, perhaps. But linking this issue back to the question of jobs, I think we tend to look at robotization, or robo-sourcing as Al Gore calls it, as an aggregate phenomenon. What I'm worried about is the structure of jobs, because we have been constantly losing lower skilled jobs, manual jobs. So for instance, when we get new people coming to our country, immigrants who may not have very high skills, higher education and training, who may not be so good at Finnish, we have had these entry jobs. They have been working, for instance, on delivering mail. And with these structural changes, robotization, automatization, we are going to lose a lot of these low-skilled jobs. And what are we going to do with the people who don't have the skills to, for instance, program robots, or to start up their own companies, marketing to kids in Parikkala? I'm really worried about that. So we need to have a plan for that as well. And that is going to come up, and it's already happening today.
Do you have a vision for this? You have been thinking about this a lot.
Well, it's not an easy issue, of course, but I think one key is that we need to update our social security system so that it is more supportive of these new types of jobs and changes on the job market. So if you have to switch between jobs, if you have to start a new career, if you believe that combining different jobs and different sources of revenue is your thing, then social security system has to support that.
Okay, thank you, Oras. How about Tuuli? What do you think about these quite difficult issues?
Yeah, that's true. First of all, of course, if Stephen Hawking says something, I'm quite sure that we have to listen very carefully. We shouldn't disagree with him many things. But what is interesting in this question is what Oras talked about, the question of what are those things that these robots will be able to do, and what is left for humans then? It's of course very, very interesting question. What we know at the moment is that a computer wins a human in chess, yes, nowadays already, but actually computer plus human still wins the computer alone in chess game. It might be that this is changing, but I think it somehow reveals that we as humans still have quite a big role in this system. But what is very clear is that there will be kind of no job in which you could not work with robots or computers or whatever is this world. Like there will be hardly any job, I would say no job, where you could say that I'm not working with this. And that's actually a big change. If you take a look at our jobs nowadays, there are still quite a lot of people who don't work with computers every day. But in the future, it's probably completely impossible. And that's big change. And that also creates this question of, is it possible to have long-term working contracts in the sense we have at the moment? Like if I do only one piece of the work and then there is this robot and then there are other people who are doing part of the job, is it possible that there is one working place and one working contract for me? Or is it such that I have some certain skills that I will serve to there and there and there and there? And that's, of course, a huge, huge challenge for our system. Like how do we create a system where it's normal to have these small working contracts to different directions, and where we still have some kind of social security, and we can trust on our future, which is very important, and especially in Finland, it has been a very big competitive advantage for us. So this is a big question.
Yeah. So you think a kind of a freelance society or entrepreneurial, more entrepreneurial, like work becomes more entrepreneurial, not to like just an employed somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. There might be a situation where no one really wants to pay me full time, but someone really wants to pay me for 1 day per week. Yeah. And then where I find the other days is a good question.
Okay, thank you, Tuuli. How about Olli-Pekka? What do you think about this?
Well, I think looking at on a longer time frame, one other interesting issue comes to my mind, and that's the fact that I think it is so that we're not only talking about kind of today's low-skill jobs that could be replaced, but also kind of middle and high-skill jobs, and that kind of, me of course being the state secretary in the government, raises up the question that what about taxes? Because the kind of that's been one of the ways that we as humans have been connected to the society, income tax. And what if we don't work anymore? We don't pay taxes for the income because we don't get any income through that. So how do we connect to the society? I think that is something that the Ministry of Finance probably is already thinking about. Another thing is the interesting thing that what is changing and what is not changing. I've been kind of following the idea of the kind of a renaissance of the manufacturing, that what that will mean, that the kind of possibilities of 3D printers and scanners, that the thing that has happened on software, the kind of long tail and kind of possibility to make kind of very tailored things, it's coming also true on the hardware side, on the manufacturing side. And I think that is an interesting future, where there are kind of huge possibilities. I think there's been a kind of an idea for a time that manufacturing is past. But I think it might be something that it's on the race, just beginning.
That's a very interesting point of view. Thank you. How about Anna? What do you think about this?
First, now I'm worried because I didn't feel I was connected to the society only through taxation. This was news to me.
That was one of the ways.
Yeah, I have to think about this and see the consequences of that. But the artificial intelligence, for me, that creates an enormous amount of possibilities and opportunities. We see that it prolongs lives in the sense that we have a totally different view on medical care through that. We have a different standard of living in the future. Also, the measurements for that will be different. We will work in different ways. Exactly as Tuuli said, we will probably have different sets of skills that we will applicate not through long lifetime working relationships, but through wandering through what we are doing. And at the same time, we will probably see our lives in a different way. Also, it has an enormous effect on education. Can we go through life with having a basic education for 18 or 19 or 20 years and then say we are done and live 120 years after that or something like that? So it will change the whole aspects. And of course that will create moral and ethic issues, but mostly it will create a new set of values. And those I look forward to, because I think it's still a development to the future. And I think also that when we look 500 or 600 or 700 years back and see where, as a living standard, we were there, and where we are going towards now, we are still going towards a better future. The question is how we will adapt and how we will see to it. And then keeping in mind that as human beings, we haven't changed over 1,000 years. We need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to have our access to water, and we are very, very much slow in our evolution. What changes is everything around us, and how we can find the balance between those two things.
Thank you. So the basic needs won't go away. But next, we will have some expert views which came up at the preliminary workshop in April. If I could please have the next slide here. Yeah. This is a little roundup from all the conclusions from the individual's point of view in the future of work. Like the experts say that we need to identify our potentials and take risks and ensure experimentation culture. And then we have supportive work, which is based on creativity, meaning and networking, and work will become more entrepreneurial. So should we take a short round around this, like what kind of measures should be taken in Finland to give our support to this experimentation culture? If you could, Anne, please begin.
I think we need to start with our basic education, and I think we need to challenge the fact that we have been admiring the PISA studies. I think we should let go of that and create an environment where education is based on curiosity, being able to challenge things, and also to experiment as a child and have good experiences. I think that sets the path. We need to start with our schooling.
Yeah. Back to the basics. How about Olli-Pekka? Experimentation culture.
I think the question is that how we manage the science of delivery. That I think there are many things that we agree in our society that what should be done. But the hard part is that how do we get it done? And in that, I'm a strong believer in experimentation. That the idea that we just kind of make we have a word in Finnish, it's called hanke. And that's what when we have something in our hands, a problem, we start a hanke. And it takes 2 years. And it's a perfect solution in theory. The only challenge is that during those 2 years, the problem we have been solving has disappeared. It's entirely different at that time. And that's why we need to go on faster. We have to go out with beta versions and do things, get things done more rapidly and learn from our experiences, also the mistakes.
Okay, so more beta versions, less hanke. Okay. How about Tuuli? What do you think about this experimentation?
I agree completely, and I'm quite sure that in next hallitusohjelma we will have some words about how we will do these experiments within next 4 years. But actually, if we take a look at the next quote there, which is that we have supportive work which is based on creativity, meaning and networking, I think that is one of the areas where we really need these experiments. We know at the moment that if you ask from people how important is work for you, the older people feel that it's quite important, and the younger ones feel that it's not that important. and more educated people feel that it is less important. So actually younger and more educated people feel that work is not that important. And of course, if we are entering in a society where we would like to engage everyone to be useful for the society, and at the same time, when we educate people more, and when these younger generations rise, they are not that interested in this working. I think we really need to create very different kind of ways to engage people for work and to make them be interested in the work that actually gets the taxes paid and gets our society running. And that's a big question which we actually don't know how to do, and experiments on that field, making us to work, is actually quite an important issue.
Yeah, maybe this license to experiment would be like a thing that creates more motivation. I don't know, maybe. So, Oras, what do you think? What would be the measures to like encourage experimentation culture?
Well, I think the key is mindsets. We Finns as a nation tend to be really risk averse, so we try to avoid risks at any cost, and obviously that is detrimental to any experimentation. So we basically need to accept failures more often, because when you experiment, you are going to fail. You're going to fail a number of times. Sometimes you succeed, but oftentimes you also fail. And let me tell you, the political culture is not very supportive of failures. Even if you are an entrepreneur, we are slowly learning that you can go bankrupt, and then you can learn from the experience, and you can be a better businessman or woman after that. Not in politics, definitely not. Failure is just a failure, and you are done after that. But the Committee for the Future, incidentally, in the Parliament has been looking at how to promote experimentation in a society. And I think, to put it short, what we need is commitment from the highest level of leadership. So basically we need the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's office, the next government's manifesto, stating that this is the way forward. This is the way we want to develop this country. We want to experiment more, learn from our mistakes, and then scale up fast. And you can also have institutional measures supporting this type of experimental society. For instance, you might have someone focusing on promoting experimentation within the government or within the state, which is something we also suggested in the committee report. Now, here comes the good news, which is it just so happens that the possible future Prime Minister has been serving on the Committee for the Future for 3 years, and he is very supportive of the idea of experimentation. So I'm really looking forward to the next government manifesto, which has, with big letters on the cover, that Finland needs to become an experimental society.
And don't be afraid of failure. So, but how about Bruce? Is there a difference between Finnish and American culture?
No difference.
No difference.
Okay. I think that, interestingly enough, I want to go back to what Anne was saying about education. So I want to play a game for a minute, and I think I can make my point. I want to ask anyone in the audience, how many liters of water go over Niagara Falls every minute? Okay. Now, let me show you exactly the response to that question in the United States. Pick me. If you go to a school in Finland and you ask a question, and even if it's a question where they know the answer, who is the president of Finland? Right? I could go to a class in any city in the U.S. and ask the question, who is the president of Finland? And I would get at least 70% of the class would be jumping up and down, and they don't even know where Finland is, right? So there's a cultural difference, which has to do with how we educate this issue of risk, failure, experimentation. And if I were going to make a quick change, because it's really not the meaning of work, it's really more the meaning of life, is 3 words. I'll give you the 3-word fix, and that is what we do in the U.S. and they don't do in Finland, and that's called show and tell. Mm-hmm. From the time you are literally thrust into the first classroom, once a day, once a week, every student is required to come to the front of the class and show off, whatever it is. This is my new hamster. Look, my dog pooped in my bedroom, and here it is. It doesn't matter. Here's my painting here. We don't care what it is. We make them get up front. It gives them a sense of self-confidence. Yeah. It gives them a sense of learn the skill of how to present. And it also says that your ideas and your thoughts, however crazy they may seem, are valuable. And that show and tell mentality continues on through life, which is why you'll always find, there's always the American who's going to stand up and say something stupid. And sometimes the magic works, but sometimes it doesn't. But we don't care how foolish we look. We are not afraid to fail because we don't see it that way. One more piece on that. Again, it's just a language bit. Language tells you a lot about culture. If you look at the Finnish word to fail, failure, the literal translation is to not succeed, right? That's what it literally translates to. But if you look at the word failure in English, the cultural definition is getting to success. It's completely different, right? We see it as, oh, you're going to learn to ride a two-wheel bike, you have to fall down. And yet culturally the language here says, oh, don't do that, because you did not, you did not succeed. So there's the shift, and I think it's much easier than you don't need a committee of the future. I'll just give you 3 words: show and tell. Really, if tomorrow if every classroom at every level in Finland started with that concept, you would see a revolution in student behavior in 12 months.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Can I very shortly comment on that? Because whenever I'm asked, what did I have the most benefit of my years at Hanken? It was that it was the first time in my life, and I was about 19 or something, 18 years old, I had to stand in front of a class, and I learned at one time. It was one experience, and I learned. And that's the best education I ever got. And I really would like to have had it when I was 6.
Yeah.
Thank you. So kind of this supporting experimentation culture is more about strengthening self-confidence and giving up fear of failure. Yeah. Anne, what do you think?
Actually, we were just discussing before this panel started with Oras that how are we going to manage in this panel discussion, and Oras said that, oh, that is very easy because I can only say that I agree with you, Anne. So now this is the case that what Oras said, I agree totally what he said, and that was I thought my point. So that if there are real experimentation and experiments, that means that there is always positive probability of failure. And that we should learn to accept, that if we really try to experiment, we need to accept the failure, and that is not a bad thing, and you don't die if you fail, but you can improve next time. And also we should be much better to taking risks, because I think Finnish people are prone to avoid all types of risks. And that actually what I learned when I was involved with this globalization strategy for Finland 10-15 years ago, when we visited the United States and the university system of the United States and innovation systems and so on, and entrepreneurs, what they said that they love risks, and that is the difference. I think reflecting what you said. But one big thing is that if we think about this type of world with new values and sort of things, that of course those require new types of skills and competencies, and because the society is transforming, values are transforming, how we then make sure that we keep everybody on board. We don't have, all of us don't have equal amount of education or same type of skills and competencies, but this society should be inclusive to everybody. So the social cohesion, I think, is very important for also in the future, even if there would be artificial intelligence and robots and everything who takes care of everything, but we human beings should really, that I see a big thing we should think about how this is then done, not just the taxation point of view, because you can always tax robots.
Can I just jump back in on that, because I think that language is a real indication of social differences. Let's call it, be honest, Finnish is a challenging language for a non-Finn. And there's no, as they say, mental Velcro. I can't, if I look at Swedish, I can find German, and if, you know, there's nothing, right? It's absolutely an enigma. But if I look at the words that you have absorbed from elsewhere, it tells me a lot about your culture. The word for risk, riski, that's not a Finnish word. There wasn't even a word for risk in Finnish, right? Clearly there wasn't. Or how about this one? Optimisti. You know, winter is coming. Those aren't Finnish concepts. So no wonder you guys have an allergy, right? Those are appendages. Those are bolt-ons recently. So I think that, you know, this issue, the future is not a challenge if we accept the fact that we have this incredibly inventive mind, all of us. Everybody is incredibly inventive. You've never looked at a kid and went, boy, that kid doesn't know how to play. Because we know how to do that. It's how do you free that up? And again, risk, optimism. I would actually ban the word failure. I hate the word failure because it has so much baggage to it, right? When you say, you know, you're not going to die if you fail. How about every time you try something, you are always learning. Yeah. Every you know, so it's, if you could find some word to substitute for failure and simply jettison all of the bad connotation of the word, and that way you're inviting people to be more creative in everything they do.
Okay, thank you everybody. This was really, really interesting. But now we have time to move on to our second theme, which is the organizational aspect of work. Meaning, what kind of organizations are we going to be working with in the future, and what will be the requirements for education? We have been talking about education today already, but the person giving us a wake-up presentation and leading us to these organizational issues will be Sanna Varpukari-Anttila. She's the CEO at Sovelto, which is one of the leading Finnish company finding solutions in ICT and learning. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mrs. Sanna Varpukari-Anttila.
Ladies, gentlemen, the panelists. My name is Sanna Varpukari-Anttila, and I will read you a story. Not from the past, but surprise, from the future. It tells about 62-year-old me and my day in 2030. I wake up just at the optimal time for my sleeping rhythm. A nice day coming again. We have an excellent spirit in our working community. The whole Europe wants to invest in virtual learning. After the know-how game was published, our turnover has doubled. Everybody wants to earn badges. In the past 10 years, the government has supported all kinds of learning at work. This is why our productive has grown. The working ways and hours are flexible. It is okay to work whenever you are and whenever you want. Usually 30 hours per week is enough. All these new things have increased our satisfaction at work. We have totally new ways of working. Automation has made the change. Well-being, customer commitment, participation and cooperation are now the most important things. I get up and update my instructions for the day. For breakfast, I need 30 grams of protein today. I put 3D food printer on. Biosensor tells about high blood pressure, and I got extra vitamin D to my porridge. There will be meetings today, so my coffee maker gives me an optional dose of neurotransmitters to boost my brain. My automatic personal trainer recommends walking today. It is the best way to optimize my recovery and boost yesterday's weight training. A RoboCab ride to Tampere station is fast. Trip takes exactly 10 minutes every day. During this time, I have a moment to check all the updates from my virtual glasses. After that, I am able to glance through my reference group recommendations for news headlines. No bad news today. I jumped to the Hyperloop train and will use the 18-minute journey to Helsinki by fitting new hats on a virtual mirror. I order one made of nanocellulose material. This material is miracle. It is also an excellent platform for growing cells and makes slimming candies. The invention and application are made in Finland. Isn't that great? We are doing very well now. Finns are the most productive and most relaxed nation on the globe. New flat and open governance gives us more freedom and trust. Learning and working goes hand in hand. Seamless cooperation gives us an opportunity to coach each other all the time. The employment has become easier. At the Pasila station, I grab the printed hat with me and go to our multifunctional working space, which we share with our partners and customers. Before our workshop, the optimizing software has analyzed our customers' resources. We will create individual training programs. It is important to identify learning styles and individual preferences. The business of the customer is changing again, and they want to talk about the necessary new skills and knowledge. It is important to communicate and train employees as well as the whole network well in advance. After the meeting, we are having lunch in Pasila Tower's roof garden restaurant. It has beautiful view over Helsinki metropolis of 2 million people. I have a few new things to learn, and I decide to study them in Hyperloop. Our company has a virtual learning environment called Sovelto-Channel, and it is integrated in my virtual lenses. I found an excellent set of nanobytes and let my teacher educate me for whole 18 minutes. The channel updates my studies in the database, and my new knowledge is now available in everyone in my network. It is only 1 p.m. when I get back to Tampere. The cab robotic, of course, gives me a ride to my parents' house. They are over 90, but still living in their own apartment. My mom has a robot leg suit on. She has just finished her 1-hour walk in the forest. She's so happy to give up the wheelchair. Physical exercise keeps her metabolism high and mind sharp. We are having coffee in the kitchen when solar-powered multicopter arrives. Tomorrow's food is in the fridge. Father's monthly meeting with his healthcare team is starting, and holograms fill the room. It is time for me to go home. In the evening, I activate my avatar in Dallas and participate our team meeting there. Before I close my connection, I will go through tomorrow's program. It seems quite light. That is nice because my husband wants to go to play anti-gravity tennis. Virtual space is made to the former garage. Now I have to change my intelligent sports suit and take my exercise. I think about my new next career. Am I going to be a virtual lawyer? Thank you.
Thank you, Sanna Varpukari-Anttila. This really gave us food for thought, really. What about you, panelists? How would you comment this? How does this kind of future sound to you? How about Tuuli?
I can start with this question of virtual lawyer, because actually that was one of the things I had written to my notes, because typically we think that it's like expert jobs that exist in the future. But actually she didn't need her personal lawyer to be a person, but she needed her virtual lawyer. And that means that actually it's also very much data and information related expertise that will also disappear. It's not only some other type of work. I think Riikka knows what happens with the journalist work, and how that is changing, and that's a good example of an area where changes happen. So it's all of our work that is really in change, not any certain special area.
Okay, thank you. Olli-Pekka, what do you think about this anti-gravity tennis or 3D printed breakfast?
Well, my kind of intuition was that this is a very kind of a very planned life. It's a very well before planned life, and then but there's the feeling that where are the kind of surprises in that kind of life? If you kind of measure everything, you kind of plan everything, you know everything. That's the same feeling I get when I kind of decide that whether I will use my iPod or Netflix or whether I will listen to radio. And I actually sometimes enjoy listening to radio because I don't know what's coming out of there. There are surprises. I bump into something I am not expected to bump into. And I think that's a good thing, that if we like Jani was showing the picture where there was, at the beginning, there was the huge amount of different media that is possible for everybody to access today. It's true from the supply side, but from the demand side, it can mean that your key loop to the world is so tiny that you only concentrate on something very kind of small. And I have a feeling that that's a bit dangerous. It can be, you can kind of concentrate on Italian football. It's a great thing. You can only have news on Italian football. You can only discuss with people on the social media who are fond of Italian football and so on. But it could be also something else than Italian football. And then we come to a kind of a dangerous waters.
The surprise factor.
Yeah.
How about Anne? Do you think that this kind of life would be possible for you in the future?
I think what will remain, regardless of all the technology and software development and robotization and all of it that has to do with it, the 3D printing and so on, I still think that we as people will remain hardworking and that we need the work and the competitiveness. And we will have to find different ways where we produce things that someone else will want to buy. And I think in some ways the trade will remain. And that will always keep us in a position of competitiveness. And we will just do it in different ways and maybe in different hours. But I think however much we look backwards in history and however we look up today, the thing that hasn't changed is basically that we as people survive through hard work. The environment is different, and the means are different, and the tools are different. But we still have to put in our own efforts in order to create something to have an advantage over someone else. And that, I think, will somehow remain. And then, of course, the other side is that as human beings, we still need our emotions, and we still need our entertainment, and we still need to be challenged as people. And that will happen in different ways in the future, but it's still necessary.
Thank you, Anne. How about Oras? What do you think about this? What did pop into your mind about this Sanna Varppari-Anttila's presentation? You have been reading a lot of science fiction, but...
Well, first of all, I was very happy that she was traveling to Tampere, because that's my hometown. And my tip for the third speaker would be that perhaps you might want to link Jyväskylä to that, because that's where I was born. But more seriously, I think it's interesting when you look at these future scenarios, there's always this fancy technology, and no one goes to summer cottage anymore. No one goes and takes a walk in the park or goes to Lapland and enjoy the nature there. And this kind of ties in with what Anne was saying previously. I think despite all the changes we are going to see in the future, there are going to be very many persistent needs and very many things that remain the same. And we might use Google Glass or whatever in the future, and we might still go to the summer cottage and enjoy the peace and quiet there. My second point would be kind of a social or political point about these new technologies and innovations, I think one good way to sum it up is that the future is already here today. It's just unevenly distributed. So basically, the elites, the global elites in Finland and other countries are already enjoying the future in terms of technology and innovations in their daily lives, because we have the means to use it, we have the finances, we have the skills perhaps to use it. But today and in 20 years of time and in 50 years of time, there will be those people who don't have the means. I'm pretty sure that in 20 years of time there will be poor people who can't go and play anti-gravity tennis. And I think that's a good thing to keep in mind when we talk about these future innovations and technologies.
Thank you, Oras. How about Bruce? How about anti-gravity bodybuilding or weightlifting?
Seems to defeat the purpose. I agree with Oras on this one a lot. I think that one of the things that makes Finland such a wonderful and remarkable country is the persistence of the relationship with nature. I don't actually see that future as being one that I want to live into. I certainly see in America and in other places, I don't see any unbridled happiness because people are burdened with more technological toys. I don't think that gives happiness. It's a distraction. If I did a poll, if you had a choice between keeping your iPad and giving up your country cottage and the walks in the woods to pick mushrooms and berries, you know, which would you choose? Forever give up the country time in the quiet of nature and the berries and the mushrooms, or keep your iPad? One or the other. I would hope that the vast majority of you all would say, no, I want my time in the forest. And I actually think a future like that is destructive. I think it's very dehumanizing. We are already going to be challenged with robots and artificial intelligence and things that are going to dehumanize us. And I actually think that humanity is going to have a growing and desperate need to connect with the reality of the world, which is nature. And the toys of technology, the benefit to me should be to free me up to have more time to connect with the larger world around me and not isolate me because I can be, choosing between Netflix and Hulu or something like that. So I vote for the blueberries myself.
Thank you, Bruce. Anne, what do you think?
Yes, what came into my mind from this and many others, these type of things where we try to project for the future, is that it looks very clean, very organized, very predetermined, and us human beings like being a part of the robots in the whole system. And instead we don't look at the technologies there to facilitate our lives, make it give better possibilities to connect or be with other people, be in the nature and have feelings and really be like a human beings. And that part usually is out of these type of projections. And that is what I'm missing, because I believe, like Anne said, that we human beings, we essentially are sensitive people who have feelings, who have needs, who have most of the things are same as today. It is not just that technology changes us, but how we use the technology for our benefit. That is the question, I think.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, let's move on. We will next have again some experts' views which came up at this preliminary workshop in April. So here we can see these thoughts which came up. So education's paradigm shift should acknowledge and support our need for lifelong learning and the changing role of work and needs of the future work. And work and everyday life will merge. We will seek and do activities that we feel passionate about and are meaningful to us and others. And then about the future leadership. The future's leader has to know how to play and help others to be creative and playful in their work. So how do you, the panelists, see the role of this, for example, this leadership and helping other people to play in their work? How would you comment this, Anne?
If I think about the future work, I believe that that is much more like teamwork and different types of teams, and not all the time the same type of organization where you have departments and units and divisions and whatsoever, which are quite rigid and silos. But I see that there is a kind of multitude of different, like a living organism, and of course to lead this type of thing requires different skills and organizations and leadership what we have today. I think that we need, even today and not in the future, but we should be better leaders to motivate and engage people, and somehow being an aggregator within these teams, so that there is somehow some sort of coherence and also kind of way of finding what is our goal, where are we heading to, how we all contribute to the same type of goal, and also discussion about what the goal should be. But then giving much more power to these teams to decide and do the things when you have set up the goals. And then if thinking about, we can work almost everywhere, 24 hours, 7 days, so the work is not tied to one location. And we should also try to benefit and give much more freedom to work and connect and network elsewhere from that, some specific space, office or factory or mill or whatsoever. So it is multitude of different types of things, and that requires a lot of social and many other types of skills to be with the people. Really, that is a people issue, not like we have been leading processes, more or less. But now we need to really lead people.
So less engineering, more people.
Yes, exactly.
Leading people. Yeah, thank you. How about Bruce? You have must have seen a lot of differences between Finnish and American leadership. Like, could we, as Finns, learn something from the American leaders, like in this enabling, being creative and playful and so on?
I'm going to not answer that question. I'm not trying to be evasive, but I think there's a more interesting, something compelling.
You can comment on that.
Which I want to sort of go back to what Anni said earlier about the whole educational reform and how we. This is a great opportunity for Finland. Finland is a country which has a tremendous focus on education, but it's time to let go of the PISA scores because they're testing the wrong thing. If you read all of the terrible reports that are coming out on climate change, there is only one theme, there's one word that comes up as the only way forward, and that's adaptation. We continue to fail the measures on reducing carbon emissions, the change is coming faster, and so the word that comes across, no matter what aspect you read, it's all about adaptation. Are we educating people today to be adaptive? Instead, it seems to me we're educating people to be much more formulaic. Here's the route, take the route, sit in the room, listen, take the notes, take the test, which is silly because, frankly, this is smarter and faster than I am, right? Memory, the whole idea of knowledge has changed, and we're not using it as such. So if I were going to, all of this issue of work, fun, play, it all has to come back to a change in what we train ourselves to do, which has got to be adaptive. We have got to be able to move quickly, which you want to call it creative, you want to call it risk-taking. Ultimately, it's about being adaptive, that we are comfortable in a constantly changing environment. And that will equip us to handle the challenge of whatever it is, because we rarely get predicting the future correctly. So if we have an adaptive skill, then that will better equip us.
Yeah, because nobody of us knows what's going to happen in 5 years or 10 years.
Well,
We just have to be
apparently,
adaptive.
but,
As a vice chairman of Committee of Future,
right,
what do you think about this adaptation? Do we have this kind of culture here? Are we going through this towards this kind of education system?
Well, I was a bit worried when listening to Bruce because you don't want to get me started on climate change. That is going to take the remaining portion of our time. I would just say that we need to adapt, but even better is to actually address the problem at its root so that we don't need to adapt so much to the changing climate. But adaptation as a human feature or a human ability, of course, is very useful, and we need that. About leadership, I guess especially we in Finland have this tradition of engineer leaders and economist leaders, and with all love to engineers and economists, we need you, but I think one of the key features in a good leader is how she or he can motivate other people to use their talent and their potential. And sometimes if you're really good at calculating stuff, that doesn't really mean that you are a people person and you can get the best out of everyone's talents. So kind of nurturing that leadership ability in our leaders, I think we have a lot of work to do in that regard. But I would also like to touch upon the education part. I definitely agree with all the people who feel that our primary education needs various reforms, and there have been many good suggestions to that effect already. I would just say that we have perhaps even more work to be done at higher levels of education, university, secondary education, and so on. And one thing I would definitely want to highlight or underline in higher education is this kind of cross-pollination of ideas, which doesn't really happen that much today. I'm a social scientist person myself. I've been studying social sciences, and again, with all love to my social scientist colleagues, they could have used a couple of lessons on mathematics. I'm pretty sure that they would be a bit smarter if they had taken a couple of classes on natural sciences or biology or whatnot. And the same applies to natural sciences and engineering as well. I would definitely want to see our engineers to study more ethics, for instance. I think that would be a really useful thing also in the business world. So this cross-pollination of ideas, interdisciplinary nature of education, I would like to see more of that happening in the future.
Thank you, Oras. Well, Tuuli, you must have lots of thoughts about this education or leadership. What will this bring to your mind?
First, one step back, because I know both Bruce and Oras here are telling about the summer cottage thing very deeply, and at the same time we know that they don't spend too much time in their summer cottages, and instead they have all their iPads and phones and things here, and if we meet here in 10 years, they will have their receptors here under their skin to tell them, like, now you need to cheer up a little bit or take it easy or whatever. So these are not things that are either or, but of course both are happening. We will go to our summer cottage, but we still will have those receptors, and we know people who go to summer cottage have their iPods or iPads or all those things with them there. So both of these things are happening, and we shouldn't be taking one or leaving other, I would say. But then to this question about leadership, actually one example about how crowdsourcing or taking people to be part of the solution might be one of the answers. I talked to one of the business leaders of one of the biggest companies in Finland, who said that they did very good cost-saving program in a way that they told to the whole all the people who worked in the company that, okay, we need to do this and this much cost savings during next year. And it worked actually even better than they expected, because people knew that, okay, if we don't do this, then there will be big changes, and it makes sense because we are wise people to do these savings. And it happened and worked well. And then we had a discussion about, like, okay, if it's easy to do kind of cost savings in a big company in this way, what it is then if it's not save or adapt, but if it's to create something new? And I think that's a big question. How do we put people to work together in a way that new innovations, new solutions might be created? How we do that in big companies, how we do it in a way that we don't need to adapt to climate change, but we can solve it, how we do it in a way that we don't need to be worried about aging population, but we can take best out of these people who don't work that much anymore, for example. And how to create these solutions is both, it's being with people and talking to people, like Anne said, but at the same time, it is sending messages to people's phones asking, like, what do you think about this now? Or asking them to be part of different kind of digital solutions. And we need both. We need to be with people as leaders and as people, as colleagues, and we need to create these platforms where participation in creating solutions happens. So these both things are super important when creating these solutions, I would say.
Yeah, and this new technology for sure helps leaders to crowdsource and get the opinions of the workers and so on. Yeah, that definitely.
And gets people committed as well.
Yeah. Thanks.
Riikka, may I have a little comment, because
yes,
I think this was very important point what you said, that not thinking about cost. That is important to think cost savings and that sort of things, but how to create something new, innovate. Currently, I think the big problem in big companies is that the management and leadership spends most time is the financial outcome, the execution of the plans, and much less thinking about what would be our future business, what we should do in the future, and how we would succeed in the future. But we just look at the past, how well we done in the past, and not discuss the crucial issues of the future. And that should, I think, change.
Exactly.
I think that was the same thing what you said. So.
Because there's a lack of strategic thinking somehow. Yeah.
And focus much more on the future and not so much digging about the small decimal points in some figures in the plans and financials.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Olli-Pekka, what do you think about this?
I would like to come back to the issue of delivery in leadership. That I think this is what it's all about, that how leaders get things done. And I'll tell a story. It was told by kind of my colleague from Tony Blair's time. So he was the kind of head of staff in the Prime Minister's office during Tony Blair's Prime Minister time. And he said kind of two examples. One example was an initiative that Tony Blair himself made in the UK. He made a speech out of blue saying that I've now decided that we are going to abolish child poverty in the UK. That's a big problem in the UK, and what we're going to do now, we're going to abolish it. Made the speech. There was then a working group created, and some discussion and some administrational work, but nothing really came out of it. Because the thing was that everybody else, after he had said it, stepped to the audience, saying, look, that guy just promised he will abolish child poverty in UK. Let's see how we'll do it. And it didn't end up well. And the other example was actually the mayor of the city of Oklahoma, who had also made a speech saying that I have this problem. I'm overweighted. I have too many kilos with me. And this is very typical here in Oklahoma, because we like good food. And I don't know what to do with this, but I would like to challenge all of you that we could together do something with this. Would you like to take the initiative, and would you come along and let's try to make this a little bit more lighter, this city of Oklahoma? And he stepped back. And there was a huge amount of activities that started happening, and a lot of things. And then after actually 3 months, he came back and said, I've been now trying to lose my weight, but I've noticed that it's very difficult here in Oklahoma, because we don't have very much kind of bicycle roads or parks to walk and go from place to another by foot. So I've decided that could we kind of make an extra pay and use that to the purpose of making those possibilities in this city to lose weight. And as Bruce can tell us, extra taxes or pays are not the most favorite thing in the USA. It got very strong support. And that was the way how he committed everybody to make the change happen. And I think that's the delivery question and change of leadership that we are in front of.
Yeah, so people may be more innovative and take responsibility, and if it's things are done like bottom up, not always just top down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. Anne, what do you think about this future leadership and or education?
I think first of all, I think that leadership will be one of our bottlenecks. I think that will be something which we will be missing of. We are already missing some of it, but we will miss of it maybe even more in the future. The other thing is, I think that as people, we are the choices that we make, and we are the sum of our choices. And we do a certain amount of choices all the time. And as leaders, we have to lead those choices. And the question is, how can we lead the choices in such a way that they all go into the same direction, or into the direction of the value that we want to create, or the decision that we want to achieve? And I think in your examples, someone was able to lead the choices of the people and someone wasn't. And I think we are, especially here in the Nordic countries, we are used to an environment where we have delegated a lot of responsibility and outsourced it to the society. And we forget that we are responsible for our choices that we make. And then again, we need somebody to lead those choices. And I think one important issue to do that is to be able to lift talent and see where you find it, you need to be able to lift it. And that's why I would always like to celebrate success. And I would never like to celebrate failure.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you. So, but the time runs fast, and now we have, we're going to move to the third and the last theme of our discussion. So, despite this fruitful discussion, I'll shift your attention towards innovation scene and renewable companies, or should we say companies revamping themselves, or whatever perspective. And here now the second person to give us the wake-up presentation will be one of our panelists, Olli-Pekka Heinonen. So the stage is yours, Olli-Pekka.
Thank you. I'll try to show you 2 PowerPoints and then maybe tell another story if I have some time. I would like to start by showing a little bit of difficult picture, but I try to explain it to you. It's about the kind of different types of innovations. I think it's very important to understand that in Finland, when we talk about innovations, we have a certain interpretation of the word. And I think it is actually pretty much the engineering innovation idea that we have in mind when we talk about innovations. The question is that this is actually a picture that has been created by Professor Berner from Norway, kind of dividing innovations in 3 different groups. There are the analytical innovations, there are the synthetic innovations, and symbolic innovations. And the analytical innovations are the ones that are mostly created in universities. They end up as like in kind of new patents, for example, as an outcome. And a typical area for analytical innovations is pharmacy, a medicine area. Then there's the area of synthetic innovations, where I think the engineering is the best example of that. And that's kind of applied problem-specific information that is used to make new innovations. And then there's the symbolic innovations, which I would say are the innovations happening, for example, in the art life, which are creating new meanings. And if I'm looking at that, those three different types of innovations, in Finland, we have been extremely good actually in analytical side in the science world. We've been able to create kind of very high level academic expertise. But what has been our challenge is that it has not that clearly led to new business innovations. So there's something that we are lacking in Finland. In the synthetic side, that is the strong point for us. That's the Tekes financing, that's the good word of the ICT sector that we have been able to develop in Finland. But then there's also the symbolic side. And actually, Björn Asheim, when he talks about this, he uses the comparison actually between Nokia and Apple, saying that Nokia is the company where it has the strengths in the patent sector, where it has been very strong on the technology side. And Apple has been the one that has been strong on the user experience. And I think there is a point for us in Finland that in order for us to succeed in the innovation field, we should be capable of mastering all these different types of innovations. And that is also something that has to do with the stickiness of innovations, that when we create something new, does it stay where it's created, or does it transfer to other countries? And the research says that more there is symbolic innovations involved, the more stickiness the innovations bear with it. So I think, for example, the gaming sector in Finland now is a very interesting sector because it has parts of analytical, synthetic and symbolic innovations inside it. And with that experience, it could be also something that we are creating something sustainable innovations in the Finnish society. Actually, I strongly believe that innovations need to be embedded in our organizational culture. That's the most important thing. It is not something that somebody else in our organization does, but it must be something that it's really an instrumental part of the culture, how we are working. Actually, I'm not going to go through these things on the PowerPoint because we have almost touched all of them. We have talked about abandoning silos. We have talked about faster startups today. We have talked about how to navigate in the fog and how to kind of give second chances and learn from the mistakes also. But the main thing is that we need, as it was Tuuli probably who was telling in the beginning about the curiosity. I think it's the same thing, that we need to build the curiosity in our organizational culture. And I end up with this story because I've been following very carefully two of my children getting their driver's license. And that's been a very interesting thing to see how it happens. Seeing the same kind of three phases in what they do. The first thing is that when they start in the car the first time, and there's the back gear is on, and you turn the wheel, and to understand that which way the car is going, it's the kind of terrific kind of energy needed in order that to happen, with red cheeks and seeing that what will happen next. And then they learn it. The next phase is the phase when they are experimenting that that skill of maneuvering the car, how do you connect with the environment? With the different signals of the environment, the weather, the other cars in the traffic and so on. And gradually they learn that part also. And then comes the third part, where 99% of us people do everything that we can use so little energy on driving as possible. We try to make it as much routine as possible. And that's, I think, the same kind of three phases in our jobs. We first learn the content of the job, then we learn how to cope with the environment in the job, and after we master those two, then comes the real choice we are making. Do we make the job as a routine to us, or do we start developing ourselves all the time in our jobs? And I think that is the innovativeness that should be one of the virtues of future work abilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Olli-Pekka. So should we take a short round with about commenting this Olli-Pekka speech?
Can I start?
No. Sorry. Bruce will be the first one.
I actually think that that's a very good description, that we go through these stages where we first learn and then define and then bring down the energy level. One of the rules we used to tell people who were getting a little burnout at a job was, imagine that you just fired yourself and tomorrow is your first day on the job. And so if you every day at the end of the day you fired yourself, you're fired, and tomorrow's your first day, it changes the energy level that you bring to the work. And that's a real rub. I mean, I think that last point is really critical. I think that in the US, when you look at some of these companies that attempt to create a culture of innovation or a culture of creativity, is that they're trying to insert levels of unpredictability into the workspace. That's why you get these crazy playrooms and fire poles and slides and Nerf balls. You know, it may or may not work, but what they're trying to do is break up the routine. To force the space to be, force the every day to be different enough that you never get past the second stage. You're always learning to navigate the stuff around you. So I think that's a really cogent point.
Okay, Oras.
The analogy about learning to drive brings me to an interview I had about traffic security in Finland. And it's interesting to compare Finland and Sweden, because in Finland, one of the reasons we have way more traffic accidents than in Sweden is that young male drivers are overconfident. So I think in that learning and innovation process, you can also reach the illusion of really mastering what you do and being overconfident about that. That might apply to other areas of innovation as well. The second thing I might want to add is that I think it's really important to identify different types of innovation, and there was one classification of innovations there. Another quite classical one might be to differentiate between technological innovations and then, for instance, business innovations. It's not that IKEA has the best and most advanced furniture in the world, or that H&M has superior clothes. It's just that they have been so good at marketing and creating their businesses in a way that they are outsmarting Finns at every step of the way. And as a politician, I would also like to talk about social innovations, because there are a lot of social innovations we need and that can contribute to solving the problems of today. We talked about crowdsourcing before. I think that's one of the most exciting social innovations of the, let's say, past 5 years. But we also have many other social innovations. For instance, fair trade. The fair trade movement is an exciting social innovation that can change the lives of millions of people. So just to kind of underline the point of seeing innovation as a really wide-ranging thing and agreeing on the point that it's not only about technology.
Okay, Anne.
Okay, yes. I think Olli-Pekka's this story was very illuminating, because that is like creating skills, connecting to the environment, and then building up automatic reactions and routines, which makes us much faster. But that is also a trap, because then we are in the box and we don't see that there might be another world in the box, and this routine might not be the best possible way to connect to the world anymore. And that brought into my mind is Kahneman's book Thinking Fast and Slow, which I think is really extraordinary, which talks about these two systems of thinking. The other one being like this instant, automatic, intuitive thing, which very often leads us astray, and wrong conclusions, wrong type of thinking and reactions. And sometimes I think the fast or speed is not always good, because sometimes it is good to take the other system on board and really starting to think. But we avoid this thinking because it takes so much brain energy. But maybe for innovations and creativity, it would be very good sometimes to stop and not react immediately, like a routine-like way, but stop and think and create something new and use a little bit of our brain energy.
Okay, thank you. Tuuli.
I first agree with Anne. If you didn't read your Thinking Fast and Slow, read. It's an excellent book. But one thing actually that came into my mind dealing with this analytical, synthetic and symbolic levels of innovation is the environment on where the innovation is happening. And we talked about experiments earlier today, and I think now it's quite interesting to take a look at what kind of innovation environment we are creating, and are we experimenting in that. And there's one example that interests me at the moment very much, that is the energy policy of Germany. You have probably heard about Energiewende. That is very, very controversial. There are people who love it because it will bring all these new technologies into the energy policy in Germany. And then there are people who are like, they are just going crazy. It will spoil the whole energy system in the whole Europe. The neighboring countries will be in trouble, and they don't even reduce their emissions as much as they are expecting. And we actually don't know who are right at the moment. It might be that this will be a huge success for German industry in a way that they have to innovate, be very innovative and create new innovations into energy policy. And if you are able to do it at this point of the time, you will be successful. At the same time, it is possible that they are not doing that well, and the other countries are going further and faster. But we actually, or at least I think, we don't know at the moment which of these options is reality. And that means that actually those experiments sometimes need to be also quite big in size. They might be huge, and we might need this kind of huge innovation environments when we are creating solutions to those huge problems that the global society is facing. And that's something I have been thinking a little bit, and I would be also interested to hear like what kind of environments these different levels of innovations need, and are our societies at the moment able to create those environments where these big solutions that are needed are able to be created.
Okay, Olli-Pekka, what would you say to this as an answer to Tuuli?
Yeah, well, I think that's a very important point, because the processes for different types of innovations are entirely different. And as I said, we kind of know the process for the first two, but for example, for the symbolic innovations, we don't really know what the process should be like. And I think I've spoken about this a lot with the people from Tekes, and I think they've done the right thing. They say that we don't know either, that we're going to experiment. So I think that is actually the right way to kind of tackle the question. But what is important also is the question that I feel very strongly that the word innovation in Finland is so strongly colored to kind of certain types of innovation that it makes us vulnerable in certain other aspects of it, that we must not kind of overdo our strengths.
Okay, thank you. Anne?
Well, first, now that I'm linked through my taxes to society, I would hope that there's not too much experimenting going on in Tekes with my money. So of course, it's also important that the public sector has a different view on innovation and the means and tools to it. On the other side, from the private sector and from the entrepreneurial point of view, you have to deal much more with the realistic environment of where you are dealing in and with the resources that you have access to. And in that point of view, what I think is sort of important and also a faster track in a certain way is not to focus on 1.0, which I think maybe in the public sector we tend to do, or we think that the public sector believes that if we in the private sector do 1.0, many good things will happen. We need 7.0, 8.0, and we need to be able to create on top what is already done and to develop further in order to gain value quicker. And that environment we need, and that environment we are missing.
So how are we going to build that kind of environment?
Again, I think, one, it is a very important question of building up on the education and change the way that we work with our education so that we have the ability to create and people with skill sets that are able to build on existing innovations and to build the next level. And then again, we need, besides the intelligence to do that and the creativity to do that, we also need the freedom to do it. So we need a more wider and open set of rules based on common values. If we have a common value set, we are able to give more space. And in other words, we need to deregulate also, and we need to create that environment. And to trust more in the judgment of the people, which we also seem to forget somewhere.
Okay, thank you. Oras.
I kind of wanted to link that creating the environment and freedom with education and higher education in particular. If I talk to my friends who work at universities, professors and researchers, super smart people, basically arguably the smartest people we have in this country, what are they doing at the universities? They are applying for funds. They are reporting back about the projects they have got funding for. They are using huge share of their time on administrative stuff rather than what they are really good at, which is creating something new, mixing ideas and using that for innovation. And I think that is clearly something, that's an area where we lag behind many other countries, like for instance American universities. If you look at the top universities in the US, my impression, and Bruce can correct me if I'm wrong, is that there the most talented people have more freedom to focus on working at what they are really good at, which is not necessarily administration and funding applications.
Okay, thank you. But why want to move on? So we have again these some experts' views which came up in these preliminary sessions. So please, if I could please have the next slide, here concerning this. So these are experts' points of on innovation scene and renewable companies. So one worker could have more than one employer. Work will be seasonal, just as Tuuli said before. And social life and creative work are the best things in life. Happiness and well-being are the driving forces of human actions. Global markets, global functions, but local production. And we should discuss openly about how digitalization affects us and the business, and we should decide that we are the winners of this game. Okay, these are just words, but how will we make this? How could Finland win this game? Anne.
I believe very much that this would be the type of world we are moving ahead. But I think it was Oras or someone else who already said that we should have a kind of social network that encourages people to take risks and change jobs and have lifelong learning, and on the other hand, but give sort of security, but not the kind of security that you stay on the social security and don't want to move on. But if we just look at these points, this looks like we are these three men from Athens who just walked in the plazas and had a nice discussion as philosophy and art and that sort of things. I believe, and in that world still we need to work, and we have to accept that all the work is not just laughing and happiness, but really tough things. So, but otherwise I don't really. But and these are global markets, global functions, but local production. That I believe in the sense that because these digitalizations give us opportunity to work, connect and work across the globe. Almost at the same time, and then we come to the Internet of Things, so 3D printing and robotization, that sort of things, we can produce cheaply locally. And if we really believe that robotization is a big thing, like I believe, like in China or elsewhere, so we are not competing with a cheap labor in Asian countries and some other developing countries in the future, but we are competing with the cheap robots which are cheap everywhere. So in that sense we can also create much more competitiveness here if we really have good business ideas, good products or services to produce, because the robots are the same price everywhere.
Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, there's a spin on this. It's a little different. It leaves me with a question. We talk about innovation, and there's a linkage between innovation and incentive. I'm often puzzled, because I look at both poles of this. The U.S., we are often criticized for the fact that we work too hard and we vacation too little. I'm certainly guilty of that. I'm not very good at vacation. And one of the reasons is that we there's a very thin social safety net in the U.S. in the sense of if you don't do it, the government is basically not going to help you out. You get a little bit of help, but not much. The other side of the pole is here you come to Finland, which you have a very, very robust social safety net. Now, logic tells me that if I know that I'm not going to fall and hurt myself, I should be jumping higher and higher and higher. I should have reckless abandon. This should be the country of crazy inventiveness because I can't fall and hurt myself. But what happens is it seems to act not as a net, but as a ceiling. The guy says, well, why should I jump? I'm okay. I got an apartment, I got a TV, I get my car on Friday, I'm okay. And so, there's no jumping. So how do you part of the challenge we talk about Finland here is how do you hold on to the valuable social commitment to the safety net, but take away that sense that I'm done? How do you use that as a trampoline instead of a magnet? It's like the guys are wearing, magnetic shoes and you can't get up. It should be a trampoline. This should be the country of absolutely crazy, insane, totally gonzo risk-taking, and it's not.
So
I'm just curious.
So Oras, as a Finnish politician, you could maybe answer Bruce. What would you say?
I would say basic income, because that would really provide the incentives for at least a number of people, not everyone. But perhaps I would make 2 points. First, about the digitalization. I heard this very appropriate statement about where we stand today, basically saying that 20 years ago we were 10 years ahead of Estonia in terms of digitalization, and today, 20 years later, we are 10 years behind. So we started really strong, and we used to be leaders in this field, and we have been slowly letting others like speed past us, and I'm a bit worried about that, because digitalization is one of the greatest possibilities we have in Finland in the future. My second point would be about globalization, and I'm not going to go into economic globalization or globalization of trade, which is an interesting topic in itself, but rather the kind of social globalization or the globalization of the people. And this brings me to Silicon Valley. I've been there a couple of times and had the opportunity to try to learn from the success of the Silicon Valley, and there are obviously many reasons to why Valley has been so successful. But one, I think, key feature is that it has been able to attract people from all over the world. You get Indians, you get Chinese people, you even get Finnish people there. So you get the talent from everywhere. And if you take a walk on the streets of Helsinki, do you see people coming from all across the globe to set up their own businesses, to work here, to provide their talent for the benefit of the society, or to try to breed the new successes and the new amazing stories you read in the papers. You don't really see that, not really. This is not a country that has been traditionally open to talent from other countries. And I'm afraid that if we stay as homogeneous as we are, if we are unable to open our doors to the talent coming from other countries and cultures, if we are unable to open ourselves to the cross-fertilization or pollination of ideas, which requires different types of people. If everyone is the same, you don't get the cross-pollination of ideas. You need different types of people. So I think that's another area where there's a lot of work to be done here in Finland.
Thank you. So let the challenge in. Tuuli, do you agree with Oras? And what would you think? What would be the first potential actions that we could do today to make this positive change?
Actually, one thing I would like to mention is that if you travel to abroad and then you ask from people like, what is that you are interested in about what we do in Finland or in Scandinavia? It's not our Nokia phones, and it's not our äitiyspakkaus or all these things, but what it is the system we have here, where people are part of the society, where we have good education, where we have this security net that is a bit problematic, but still, when people from abroad take a look towards Finland or Sweden or Norway, it's always this kind of amazingness of how you were able to create that kind of society where you don't have that kind of problems that we have in many other countries. And that's actually something that is quite interesting, because I agree that, of course, the net thing should be more like a trampoline, and I agree that it creates some challenges. But at the same time, we have to remember that we have been able to create quite a special system in where our businesses are a part of it and people are living, and that is something. I don't know what is the answer and how to keep the net and transfer it to trampoline, but I think we cannot forget the strengths of our society when we are talking about these issues. But one more extra thing was that actually yesterday night, Stuart Parking said in his speech that, yeah, one of the first innovations dealing with this thing I have innovated, I got the prize today, I actually invented it during my summer holiday, because my boss kind of said that it's not that interesting, and he didn't let me to work with that in the beginning. And I think that's something we have to concentrate a bit more and think that I would love to see a Finnish working life where no one needs to do his biggest inventions during summer holiday, but you could do it as part of your everyday working life. And how we would be able to create that kind of society and that kind of work life where this is possible, not only for the super elite workers as Stuart parking, but pretty much for everyone, to give some certain space in the work to be able to do what is his or hers most interest where it is, and to use the power to that. That is something I would like kind of challenge you to think. If we are able to do that, that will be quite a big thing for our society.
Olli-Pekka.
Two things. The first is that I think the pace of change is so fast that we have to admit that we do not inherit the well-being of our society. That we have to create it every time from the scratch. And if we are unable to do it, I think that has something to do with what Oreck was saying about the risk-taking. It is something that we believe that we don't have to, because we are such a high-quality, well-being society. But we won't be if we don't take the risks and if we are not innovative in the future. The other point is that I think one thing that we have that has come up with all these three kind of different themes here is the question that how we can utilize each other's skills, abilities and knowledge. And that is something that really starts from the education system. That we can kind of make huge lists that what skills each one of us should have. But I remember already 15 years ago when I was the Minister for Education, that looking at those lists, it was clear that there can't be this kind of super girls or boys in reality. That the only way to get this list ready is that we learn already from the beginning to utilize each other's abilities. Then we can make it as a whole. And that's the same thing that Oras was saying, that how we utilize also in the working life, the difference. Do we value the difference of people in making new innovations? I think that is very essential.
Thank you, Olli-Pekka and Anne.
I think everything that's said here on the wall are things which will happen and which in many ways will bring our work. As Oras said, it's already here, the future of the work, and we will have to see what as a consequence it will bring to us. But on the other side, we need also the courage and the ability to embrace this change in many ways. And for us, that needs also the courage to change some of the structures in our society. It also means that we have to accept that if one worker has more employers and work will be seasonal, we have to have a different kind of labor market, and we have to have a different rule of how we treat with our labor market, and we have to have more freedom in that respect. Not saying that we shouldn't take care of those that need to be taken care of, but we also maybe have to give more trust and faith into the people and their choices and in us as leaders for the future. And then we also need to make things possible in the sense that